The phone jolted me awake at 5 in the morning. It was my father, his voice frantic and shaking. "Karen, what have you done? The house is empty. Everything is gone." "There's nothing left but that stupid book," I smiled to myself, remembering Christmas morning 3 days ago. While my 22-year-old sister Amanda unwrapped first-class plane tickets to Europe, I received a self-help book titled How to Grow Up with a condescending note inside. That single gift revealed what my parents truly thought of me, despite 8 years of sacrificing my dreams to run their hardware store. They never saw my worth, but soon they'd understand exactly what happens when you finally get what you ask for. I had been looking forward to Christmas with my family for weeks. This year would be different, I told myself. This year they would finally see how much I'd given up for them. My name is Karen Anderson, 28 years old, and for the past 8 years I've been running Anderson Family Hardware 6 days a week, often working 60 hours or more. The store had been my father's pride and joy for decades before his minor heart attack 8 years ago prompted me to step in. "It's just temporary," he'd said back then, "just until I'm back on my feet." But temporary turned into permanent. I deferred my acceptance to the prestigious Westlake College of Art, where I'd earned a partial scholarship. My portfolio of architectural and landscape paintings had impressed the admissions committee enough that they'd written me a personal letter. But family comes first, right? That's what my parents always taught me. So while my younger sister Amanda continued her education at Greenfield University, where she studied international business, and seemed to spend more time posting travel photos than attending classes, I was behind the counter at Anderson. Family Hardware, learning about pipe fittings and power tools. Christmas morning arrived with a dusting of snow across our suburban neighborhood. I drove over early to help my mother with breakfast, as I always did. Our family home was a spacious colonial-style house my parents had purchased 20 years ago when my father's business was first becoming successful. I still had my old bedroom upstairs, though I rarely used it anymore, preferring my small apartment above the store. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," my mother Diane said when I arrived already, wearing her holiday apron with reindeer dancing across the front. "Merry Christmas, Mom," I replied, hanging my coat. "Need help with anything?" "You can set the table. Your father's in the living room arranging the gifts." I found my father, Martin Anderson, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and reading glasses perched on his nose, carefully arranging wrapped packages under our 12-foot Christmas tree. He'd always been meticulous about the presentation of gifts. "Morning, Dad." "Merry Christmas." "Karen, didn't hear you come in. Excited for gifts this year?" I nodded, though gift-giving had become predictable in recent years. My parents always gave Amanda extravagant presents last year. It was a MacBook Pro and designer boots, while I received practical things like kitchen appliances or gift cards to home goods stores. Amanda arrived fashionably late as usual, bringing a gust of cold air and the scent of expensive perfume. At 22, she was beautiful, confident, and perpetually tan from her frequent travels. Our parents beamed when she entered. "The golden child has arrived," she announced dramatically, spreading her arms. "Let Christmas commence." After a breakfast where Amanda dominated the conversation with stories about her internship and social life at school, we gathered in the living room for presents. My father played Santa as he always did, distributing gifts one by one in an order he had predetermined. Amanda went first, unwrapping a cashmere sweater from a boutique in the city. "It's gorgeous. Thank you," she squealed. My first gift was a set of kitchen towels. "These will be perfect for your apartment," my mother said. I smiled and thanked them sincerely. I did need new towels. The pattern continued. Amanda received wireless earbuds, a designer purse, and a new smartphone. I got socks, a coffee maker to replace my broken one, and a gift card to the local grocery store. Then came the final gifts. My father handed Amanda a small envelope with a dramatic flourish. "This is something special for our globetrotter," he said proudly. Amanda opened it and screamed with delight. "First-class tickets to Europe for 3 months. Are you serious? This is amazing." She jumped up and hugged both parents. "I've been dying to see Paris in the spring." My mother beamed. "We're so proud of your achievements, honey. You deserve to see the world before you start your career." Then my father handed me a rectangular package wrapped in simple green paper. "And for our Karen," he said. I unwrapped it to find a book titled How to Grow Up, a 30-Day Guide to Adult Responsibility and Success. There was a handwritten inscription inside. "To Karen, time to become the responsible daughter we know you can be. Love, Mom and Dad." I stared at it, reading the words repeatedly, making sure I understood. My throat tightened as I looked up at my parents' expectant faces. "Do you like it?" my mother asked. "We thought it might help you find some direction." "Direction," I managed to say. My father nodded enthusiastically. "You've been stuck in the same routine for years now. You have so much potential, but you're not using it. This book has excellent reviews online. It might give you the push you need to really grow up and make something of yourself." Amanda glanced at me with a flicker of sympathy before turning back to her plane tickets. "These are for March through May. That's perfect timing before my summer internship." I forced a smile and thanked my parents for the book. Inside, something cracked. 8 years of running their business, of putting my dreams on hold, of working 60-hour weeks, and they thought I needed to grow up. The final blow came during Christmas dinner. As we ate the roast I had helped my mother prepare. My father cleared his throat. "We have some exciting news," he announced. "We've decided to sell the hardware store." I froze mid-bite. "What?" "We've been talking with Peterson's Home Supply. They're looking to expand into our area, and they've made us a very generous offer." "When? When were you going to tell me this?" I asked, my voice barely audible. My mother reached over to pat my hand. "We're telling you now, dear. The deal isn't finalized yet, but it's looking very promising. They might even keep you on as a manager if you're interested." "If I'm interested," I repeated. "Mom, I've been running that store for 8 years. Don't I have any say in this decision?" My father frowned. "Karen, the store is our retirement plan. We need to think about our future." "What about my future? What about the 8 years I've given to that store?" Amanda intervened. "Karen, don't be dramatic. You can find another job. Maybe this is your chance to finally do something else with your life." My father nodded approvingly at Amanda. "Exactly. It's time for all of us to move forward. And speaking of moving forward, Amanda, tell Karen about your internship offer." As Amanda launched into a story about her prestigious internship opportunity, I sat silently, the How to Grow Up book mocking me from where I'd left it on the side table. I drove back to my apartment above the hardware store in a daze. Snow had started falling again, large flakes swirling in my headlights as I navigated the familiar streets of our small town. The Christmas lights strung across Main Street seemed to mock me now, twinkling with a cheerfulness I couldn't share. My apartment was small but comfortable, a one-bedroom with a tiny kitchen and living area. I decorated it simply, mostly with second-hand furniture and a few of my own paintings. 8 years ago, when I first moved in, it was supposed to be temporary. Just until my father recovered. Just until I could go to art school. Just until... I tossed my keys onto the counter and placed the How to Grow Up book beside them. The inscription stared up at me. "Time to become the responsible daughter we know you can be." My chest tightened with a mixture of anger and disbelief. How could they see me this way after everything I'd done? I'd been nothing but responsible since the day my father clutched his chest in the middle of the hardware store, and I called 911 with shaking hands. I walked to my closet and pulled out a box labeled Art School. Inside were my old sketchbooks, acceptance letters, and my portfolio that had impressed the admissions committee at Westlake. I hadn't opened this box in years, but tonight I needed to remember who I was before I became the girl behind the counter at Anderson Family Hardware. As I flipped through my sketches, something slipped from between the pages, a letter I didn't recognize. It was from Westlake College of Art, dated 6 months after I'd deferred my acceptance. I opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Miss Anderson, we are pleased to inform you that your scholarship has been increased to a full tuition waiver based on the exceptional quality of your supplemental portfolio work." I stared at the letter in shock. I had never seen this before. How had I missed something so important? Then I noticed the torn edge of the envelope. It had been opened already. By someone else. A cold suspicion formed in my mind. I grabbed my coat and headed downstairs to the store. Using my keys, I entered the darkened space and went straight to my father's old office in the back. Though he rarely came in anymore, he had insisted on keeping all the business records here. I started going through the filing cabinet systematically. In a folder marked Personal, I found what I was looking for: more letters from Westlake, unopened scholarship offers from other art schools. Even a letter from a gallery interested in my work. All addressed to me. All hidden away by my parents. My hands shook as I continued searching. In another drawer, I found financial records for the store. As I flipped through them, a pattern emerged that made my blood run cold. For years, the store had been highly profitable, much more so than my parents had led me to believe. My salary was barely a fraction of what the position should have paid a store manager. Meanwhile, there were regular transfers to an account labeled Amanda Education Fund that far exceeded typical college tuition. They had been using the store's profits I had helped generate with my hard work to fund Amanda's lifestyle, while paying me barely enough to cover my small apartment and basic needs. I sank into my father's chair, the evidence spread before me. My parents hadn't just favored Amanda. They had actively held me back while using me to support her. The hardware store wasn't just a family business I was helping with. It was a prison they had built for me while presenting it as a responsibility I needed to fulfill. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Hope you're feeling better about things, dear. Remember, change is good for everyone. Maybe read the first chapter of that book tonight." I picked up the How to Grow Up book I'd brought downstairs with me, and finally opened it properly. As I flipped through the pages, the condescension leaped out at me. Chapter 1. Taking Initiative. Stop waiting for life to happen to you and make your own opportunities. Chapter 5. Financial Independence. Breaking free from relying on others to support your lifestyle. Chapter 12. Creating your own path. The mature adult doesn't follow. They lead. The irony was suffocating. They had systematically destroyed my opportunities while making me believe I was helping the family. They had underpaid me while using my labor to fund my sister's dreams. They had forced me to follow their path while criticizing me for not creating my own. Something snapped inside me. I had been the responsible one all along. I had sacrificed everything for them, and now they were selling the store without even consulting me after telling me for years that it would someday be partly mine. I wiped tears from my cheeks, suddenly aware I was crying. But these weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of clarity, of resolve. I remembered another life I had almost had, not just art school, but other dreams too. I thought of Tyler, my fiancé from 3 years ago. He'd been offered a job in Seattle and asked me to come with him. My parents had guilted me about abandoning the store about my responsibilities. I'd chosen them over him, and he'd left without me. I thought of the friendships I'd let wither, because I never had time to maintain them working 6 days a week at the store. I thought of the art shows I'd missed, the classes I could have taken, the life I could have built. And for what? For parents who saw me as immature and irresponsible, for a sister who took my sacrifices for granted. I looked down at the How to Grow Up book in my hands, and for the first time since Christmas morning, I smiled. Maybe it was time to take this advice after all. Maybe it was time to truly grow up, not by their definition, but by mine. I knew what I needed to do. I would take initiative. I would create my own opportunities. I would forge my own path. Starting now. The next morning, I called Jess Baker, my one remaining close friend from high school, who hadn't given up on me despite my constant rain check responses to her invitations over the years. Karen Anderson, calling before noon the day after Christmas. "Is the world ending?" she joked when she answered. "Can we meet for coffee? I really need to talk to someone." 2 hours later, we were sitting in Corner Cafe, a small coffee shop downtown that had somehow survived the influx of chain stores. Jess looked exactly as she always did, confident with her curly hair pulled back and an expression that said she could handle whatever you threw at her. She'd become a paralegal at one of the larger law firms in town, and she'd tried for years to convince me I was wasting my potential at the hardware store. "So, spill," she said after our coffees arrived. "What's the emergency?" I told her everything, the Christmas gifts, the store being sold, the hidden letters and financial records I'd found. As I spoke, her expression shifted from concern to outright anger. "Those manipulative jerks," she finally said. "Karen, do you realize what they've done? They've been using you as free labor for 8 years while actively sabotaging your future." Hearing someone else say it made it feel more real. "I know. And now they're selling the store without even considering me." Jess stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "You know, this might actually be your opportunity to break free. Break free how I've got almost no savings because they've been underpaying me for years. I haven't finished college. My art skills are rusty at best." "But you do have one thing," Jess said, leaning forward. "You told me years ago that when your dad set up the business structure, he made you a partial owner to reduce the tax burden, right?" The memory clicked into place. "You're right. When I turned 21, he made me a 30% owner. but he maintained controlling interest and handled all the business decisions. "Have you ever actually read the ownership agreement?" Jess asked. "My boss always says most people never read the fine print of their most important documents." I shook my head. Dad just told me what it meant. I trusted him. Jess pulled out her phone. "My firm has a new business attorney, Sandra Palmer. She's brilliant. Let me text her." While Jess texted, I sipped my coffee, my mind spinning with possibilities. Did I actually have some leverage here? "One more thing," Jess said, looking up from her phone. "You mentioned they've been undervaluing the business to you. Have you checked the actual market value of the store, location, inventory, customer base?" "No, but I know where to find all that information. Running the store for 8 years meant I knew every aspect of its operations, including its true value." "Sandra can see you tomorrow morning," Jess said, showing me the response on her phone. "Bring any documents you have about the ownership structure." After coffee with Jess, I returned to the store with new purpose. It was my day off, and the holiday meant the store was closed. I had the whole place to myself. I started in the office gathering all the legal documents related to ownership. Then I began a systematic inventory of our stock, taking photos of shelving units full of merchandise. I documented everything from the expensive power tools to the boxes of nails. By the end of the day, I had a comprehensive record of exactly what the store contained and its wholesale and retail values. As I worked, I thought about what growing up really meant. It meant taking responsibility, yes, but also recognizing when others were taking advantage of you. It meant standing up for yourself even when it was difficult. It meant making hard choices. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out my art supplies. My hands felt stiff at first, unpracticed, but soon the familiar joy of creating returned. I sketched late into the night, letting my emotions flow through my pencil onto the paper. The next morning, I met with Sandra Palmer at her office. She was younger than I expected, perhaps in her mid-30s, with short dark hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Jess explained your situation," she said after we shook hands. "Let me see those documents." I handed over the folder containing the ownership agreement and watched as she read through it carefully, occasionally making notes. After about 20 minutes, she looked up. "This is very interesting," she said. "Your father was clever in how he structured this. As the majority owner, he does have controlling interest in most decisions. However," she pointed to a specific paragraph, "there's a clause here about consensual sale of assets. Essentially, if the majority owners attempt to sell the business without consensus from all owners, the minority owners have the right to either block the sale or exercise a buyout option at a predetermined formula price." "What does that mean in practical terms?" I asked. "It means you have leverage. They can't sell the store without your agreement, at least not easily. And if they try, you have the right to buy them out at what appears to be a very favorable rate." She did some quick calculations on a notepad. "Based on the figures you've given me about the store's value, you could potentially purchase their 70% for significantly less than market value." I stared at her. "But I don't have that kind of money." "No, but you do have assets. Your 30% ownership has value. You could potentially sell your share to a third party and use those funds as leverage. Or you could find an investor who would back your buyout in exchange for a stake in the business." As I left Sandra's office, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number. "Karen, it's Tyler Davis. I heard from Jess that you might need some help with a business matter. I'm in town for the holidays. Coffee." My heart skipped. Tyler, the man I'd almost married before my parents convinced me to choose the store over him. What were the odds he'd be back in town right now? We arranged to meet at the same cafe where I'd met Jess. Seeing Tyler walk through the door was like being transported back in time. He was still tall and lean, with those kind blue eyes that had always seen the best in me. But there was a new confidence in the way he carried himself. "Karen," he said, smiling as he sat down across from me. "It's been a while." 3 years, I replied. "You look good." "So do you. Jess mentioned you're having some business issues." I gave him the condensed version of what was happening. To my surprise, he nodded with understanding rather than judgment. "I always wondered if something like this would happen," he said. "Your parents never seemed to appreciate what they had in you." "What do you mean?" "Karen, you were the heart of that store. Customers came back because of you, not because of the products. You have a gift for connecting with people, for understanding what they need. I'm not surprised the business thrived under your management, even if your parents took the credit." His words warmed something inside me that had been cold for a long time. Thank you, but I still don't know how to fix this situation. Tyler leaned forward. What if I told you I might be able to help? After Seattle, I started my own construction company. We've done well expanded to 3 states. I've been looking for supply partners in this region. You're suggesting a business partnership initially. I have capital, you have expertise, and a potential ownership opportunity. Together, we could either secure your position with the existing store or create something new. I stared at him, hardly daring to believe what I was hearing. Why would you want to help me after how things ended between us? Tyler's expression softened. Because I never stopped believing in you, Karen. Even when you chose to stay, I understood why. Family loyalty is part of who you are. It's one of the things I've always admired about you. As I walked home that evening, my mind was racing with possibilities. Between just Sandra and now Tyler, I suddenly had options I hadn't even imagined 24 hours ago. Back in my apartment, I opened the How to Grow Up book again, this time reading it with new eyes. One passage caught my attention. Growing up isn't about meeting others' expectations. It's about having the courage to define success on your own terms and taking decisive action to achieve it. For the first time since Christmas morning, I laughed out loud. My parents had unknowingly handed me the very advice I needed, not to conform to their idea of responsibility, but to break free from it. I pulled out a notebook and began to write, creating a comprehensive plan. Step by step, I outlined how I would reclaim my future, starting with the store. By the time I went to bed, the plan was taking shape, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. What my parents didn't realize is that I was about to grow up in a way they never anticipated. Over the next 3 days, I moved with precision and purpose. The store was closed for the holiday week, giving me the perfect opportunity to implement my plan without interruption. Each morning, I woke up early and consulted my notebook, where I'd written out every step in detail. First, I contacted 5 competitors within a 100-mile radius, inquiring about their interest in purchasing quality inventory at below-market rates. The responses were enthusiastic. January was typically a slow month for hardware sales, and the opportunity to stock up at discount prices was appealing. I was careful to structure these as private sales of items I technically owned as part owner of the business. Next, I called Nathan Collins, my former classmate from the art program I'd briefly attended before dropping out to run the store. According to his social media, he now owned a small but successful gallery in the arts district of the city about an hour away. Karen Anderson. It's been forever, he exclaimed when I reached him. I still have that landscape you did in first-year composition. It's hanging in my office. Really, I figured everyone had forgotten about me and my art by now. Are you kidding? Professor Winters still talks about you as the one that got away. Your portfolio was legendary in our department. What's up? I explained that I was looking for a small commercial space, possibly something that could serve as both a studio and retail location. Nathan immediately suggested several options in his neighborhood, where old industrial spaces were being converted to arts venues. There's actually a perfect spot next door to my gallery, he said. It used to be a bookbinder's workshop. Great natural light, about 1,000 square feet, and the landlord is desperate to rent it after the last tenant left abruptly. I could put you in touch. By the afternoon of the first day, I had appointments to view 3 potential spaces the following week. That evening, I received a call from Sandra Palmer with more information about my legal position. I've reviewed the situation more thoroughly, she said. Your parents have already entered into preliminary negotiations with Peterson's, which potentially triggers the consensual sale clause in your ownership agreement. This strengthens your position considerably. So what's my best move, I asked. Document everything. Create a record of the store's true value. And most importantly, secure your ownership interest before they realize what's happening. On the second day, I began the process of setting up separate financial accounts and a new LLC under my name. Thanks to Jess's connections at her law firm, the paperwork was expedited. By afternoon, Karen Anderson Design and Consulting LLC was officially registered. I also began quietly moving select inventory items to a storage unit I'd rented on the edge of town. I focused on high-value, easy-to-transport merchandise, specialty tools, premium fixtures, and rare hardwoods we kept in back for special orders. As part owner, I was careful to document everything for a fair financial accounting later. Tyler arrived that evening with a small crew of trusted employees from his construction company to help with the heavier items. As they worked efficiently loading the truck, he pulled me aside. "I've been looking into Peterson's Home Supply," he said quietly. "They have a reputation for buying local stores, stripping them of valuable inventory and customer lists, then closing the physical locations within 6 months." My stomach dropped. So all that talk about possibly keeping me on as manager, likely just to keep you cooperative during the transition. They typically bring in their own people, then eliminate positions once they've extracted what they need. I shook my head, anger rising again. My parents would know this if they'd done any research. They don't care what happens to the employees or the community that relies on this store. Or they knew and didn't tell you, Tyler said gently. Either way, it confirms we're doing the right thing. On the morning of the third day, I received a text from my mother. "We're driving up to visit Amanda at school for the weekend. Her roommate went home for the holidays so we can stay in the dorm. Back Sunday night. Please check on the house." I stared at the text for a long moment. They were going to be gone for 2 full days, giving me uninterrupted access to the store and their home. It was almost too perfect. Where go, I texted Tyler. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of activity. While Tyler and his crew continued moving inventory to secure locations, I met with a commercial real estate agent recommended by Sandra. The agent was intrigued by my situation and agreed to represent me in confidential negotiations with several interested parties. By Saturday afternoon, I had a signed letter of intent from a regional developer who was willing to pay a premium for my 30% ownership stake in the store. The money would be held in escrow until the transaction could be finalized, but the commitment gave me the leverage I needed for the next phase. Saturday evening, I entered my parents' empty house using the key they'd given me for emergencies. This certainly qualified. Working methodically, I documented the contents of each room, focusing particularly on items purchased with store profits. The expensive furniture, the state-of-the-art appliances, the luxury items that filled their home while I lived in a small apartment with second-hand furnishings, all of it represented years of unequal distribution of the wealth I'd helped create. I didn't touch anything yet. That would come later. Sunday morning, I met with Sandra again to review my progress and finalize my strategy. "You've done impressive work," she said, looking over my documentation. "Now let's talk about the buyout option. With the letter of intent for your 30%, you have the capital to trigger the formula price purchase of their 70%. And what happens when they refuse?" Sandra smiled thinly. "The ownership agreement is quite clear. If they've initiated sale proceedings, which they have with Peterson's, you have the right to match any offer. And since the formula price is significantly below what Peterson's is offering, you'll essentially be buying their share at a discount. Won't they fight it?" "They can try, but the agreement was drafted by their attorney, presumably to protect them from you selling your share without their approval. They never imagined you'd be in a position to buy them out." Classic case of unintended consequences. Sunday afternoon, while my parents were still driving back from visiting Amanda, I used my key to their house one more time. This time I wasn't alone. Tyler had arranged for a small moving company to meet us there. "Are you sure about this part of the plan?" he asked as we stood in the entryway. I nodded, my resolve firm. Every piece of furniture, every appliance, every luxury item in this house was purchased with profits from the store, profits that should have been shared more equally. As part owner of the business that funded these purchases, I have a claim to them. Besides, I added, looking around at the expensive furnishings selling these items will help cover the costs of starting my new business. "Where should we start?" asked the lead mover. Everything, I said simply. It all goes. By evening, the house was empty except for basic fixtures, and one item, the How to Grow Up book, which I placed prominently on the kitchen counter, open to Chapter 7, Embracing Change and New Beginnings. Beside it, I left a note. "I've decided to take your advice and grow up. Thank you for showing me exactly what that means, Karen." As we were finishing, my phone rang. It was Amanda. "Karen, where are you? I've been trying to reach you all weekend." "I've been busy. What's up?" "I just wanted to check if you're okay after Christmas. The book thing was kind of harsh." I paused, surprised by her apparent concern. "Why do you care, Amanda? You got plane tickets to Europe. I got told I need to grow up." She sighed. "Look, I know it seems unfair, but I heard Mom and Dad talking after you left. They're worried about you being stuck in the same place forever." They think selling the store will force you to finally move on and do something with your life. Did they happen to mention what they plan to do with the money from selling the store, the business I've been running for 8 years? Her hesitation told me everything. They mentioned possibly helping me with a down payment on a condo after graduation. And their retirement, of course. Of course, I said flatly. And what about me, Amanda? Did they mention any plans to compensate me for the years I've worked for below market wages? Or for giving up my art school scholarship that they hid from me? What are you talking about? What scholarship? I realized she genuinely didn't know. Never mind, I've got to go. I have a busy day tomorrow. Wait, Karen. I ended the call and turned to Tyler, who had been pretending not to listen. She doesn't know, I said simply. Does that change anything about the plan? He asked. I thought for a moment, then shook my head. No. This isn't about punishing Amanda. It's about finally standing up for myself. As we drove away from my parents' empty house, I felt a strange mix of emotions, sadness for the years, lost anger at the manipulation, but most of all a surging sense of freedom. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, but for the first time in 8 years, I was ready to face it on my own terms. Monday morning dawned clear and cold. I woke early, feeling strangely calm, despite knowing that today would change everything. By now, my parents would have returned home to find their house emptied with nothing but the book and my note. I dressed carefully in clothes I'd rarely worn, a tailored blazer, slim pants, and low heels that projected confidence and professionalism. Looking in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. Gone was the hardware store manager in jeans and a polo shirt. The woman staring back at me looked like someone who commanded respect. At precisely 9 o'clock, I pulled up to the hardware store. A small crowd had gathered outside, including several employees who looked confused about why the store wasn't opening on time. Standing by the entrance were my parents, my father red-faced and agitated, my mother pale and clutching her purse like a lifeline. As I stepped out of my car, my father stormed toward me. "What the hell have you done?" he demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "Our house. Everything is gone. And Jenkins just called to say someone's been selling off store inventory. Have you lost your mind?" Several bystanders turned to watch the confrontation. I kept my voice calm and even. "I haven't lost my mind, Dad. I finally found it. The store isn't opening today. In fact, it won't be opening again under Anderson Family Hardware." "What are you talking about?" my mother interjected, stepping forward. "I've exercised my right as 30% owner to intervene in your sale to Peterson's," I explained, "and I've triggered the buyout clause in our ownership agreement." My father's face went from red to purple. "That's impossible. You don't have the money." "Actually, I do. I've sold my 30% stake to an interested party, and I'm using those funds to purchase your 70% at the formula price specified in the agreement. I have the paperwork right here." I held up the folder Sandra had prepared. "You can't do this," my father sputtered. "I already have," I replied calmly. "The documents were filed first thing this morning. Sandra Palmer's office handled everything. I now own 100% of what was Anderson Family Hardware." "Sandra Palmer." My mother looked confused. "Martin, isn't that Jeffrey Palmer's daughter? Your golf buddy's girl?" My father seemed to deflate slightly, the implications sinking in. Sandra's father was indeed a prominent member of the business community, and my father's occasional golf partner. The connection lent legitimacy to my claim. As for the house, I continued, everything I removed was purchased with store profits. Profits that should have been shared more equitably given my role in the business. I've documented all of it for the financial settlement. "Financial settlement," my mother repeated weakly. "Yes. My attorney has prepared a comprehensive accounting of back wages owed to me based on standard industry compensation for a store manager of my experience. The difference between what I was paid and what I should have been paid plus interest comes to a significant amount. My father's legal training finally kicked in, and he attempted to regain control of the situation. This is ridiculous. We'll fight this in court." "You could," I acknowledged, "but then we'd have to make public the financial records I found, including the documents showing how you intercepted my art school scholarship offers and the evidence of how store funds were diverted to pay for Amanda's education and lifestyle while I was told the business was barely breaking." "Even." My mother gasped. My father's face drained of color. You wouldn't, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I don't want to, I said honestly. I'd prefer to handle this privately and move forward, but I will protect myself if necessary. At that moment, Tyler pulled up in his truck, followed by 2 more vehicles. He stepped out and came to stand beside me, a silent show of support. Who's this? My father demanded. Dad, you remember Tyler Davis. We were engaged 3 years ago before you convinced me I couldn't leave the store. Recognition dawned on my father's face. The construction guy. You're back with him now. We're business associates, Tyler said smoothly, extending his hand. My father ignored it. Business associates, my mother repeated. Yes, I explained. Tyler's construction company is partnering with me on a new venture. We've purchased a commercial space in the Arts District. I'll be opening a design studio and specialty home goods store focusing on custom architectural elements and furniture. As I spoke, the employees who had gathered were listening intently. Jimmy, our longest-serving staff member, stepped forward. What about us, Karen? What happens to our jobs? I turned to him with a reassuring smile. I've arranged interviews for all of you with quality local businesses looking for experienced people. For those interested, there will also be positions available at my new store once it's established. No one is being abandoned. Relief washed over several faces in the crowd. My father noticed, and his expression hardened. You've been planning this for a while, haven't you? He accused. No, I said, truthfully. Just since Christmas. Since you gave me this. I pulled the How to Grow Up book from my bag and held it up. You wanted me to become responsible, take initiative, and create my own opportunities. That's exactly what I've done. The irony wasn't lost on the onlookers, several of whom exchanged knowing glances. My mother stepped forward, trying a different approach. Karen, sweetie, let's discuss this privately. As a family. I tried to be part of this family for 8 years, Mom. I put everything on hold, my education, my career, my personal life, to help when Dad had his heart attack. And how did you repay that sacrifice? By treating me like a child who needs to grow up while planning to sell the store out from under me. We were going to give you some of the money my father offered weekly. Some. After 8 years of running the business, after helping triple the annual revenue, after building relationships with every contractor and homeowner in this town, I shook my head. I deserved better. I deserved honesty at the very least. Tyler checked his watch. The movers are here for the remaining inventory, he said quietly. I nodded and turned back to my parents. I need to get to work now. Sandra will be in touch about the financial settlement. I suggest you cooperate, it will be simpler for everyone. As I turned to walk away, my father called after me, his voice breaking slightly. Karen, please. What are we supposed to do now? Where are we supposed to live? I paused and looked back at them, feeling a surprising lack of satisfaction at their distress. You still have your savings, your investments, and the money from my purchase of your ownership stake. It's more than enough to start over, just like you were planning for me to do. As I directed the movers and coordinated with Tyler's team throughout the day, a strange feeling of peace settled over me. This wasn't about revenge, I realized. It was about justice for myself and for the dreams I'd put aside for too long. By evening, the store was empty, its shelves bare, the register silent. I stood in the middle of the empty space, memories washing over me, my first day behind the counter. The regular customers who became friends, the satisfaction of helping someone find exactly what they needed for a project. You okay? Tyler asked, coming to stand beside me. I think I am, I said, surprised to find it was true. For the first time in years. As we locked the doors for the final time, a sold sign gleaming in the window, I felt something shift inside me, a weight lifting, a door opening. The future stretched before me, uncertain, but full of possibilities that were finally mine to choose. My phone rang just as we were getting into our vehicles. It was Amanda. Karen, what the hell is going on? Mom and Dad just called me hysterical, saying you've stolen everything and destroyed the family business. That's not quite accurate, I replied calmly. I've exercised my legal rights as part owner of the business, and I've reclaimed compensation for years of underpaid work. They said you emptied the house, that you took everything. Everything purchased with store profits, yes. Profits that should have been shared fairly. There was a long pause. Karen, is it true what Mom said? That you found letters from art schools they kept from you? Yes, I said simply, including a full scholarship to Westlake that they intercepted 6 months after I deferred to help with the store. Another pause, longer this time. I didn't know, she finally said, her voice small. I swear, Karen, I didn't know they did that to you. I believe you, I said, and I did. Amanda had been a teenager when this all started, focused on her own life and dreams. But did you ever wonder why I stayed at the store all these years while you got to go to college, travel the world, and pursue your dreams? I guess I thought. I thought it was what you wanted, that you weren't interested in college or travel, that you were happy running the store. The innocence, or perhaps willful ignorance in her assumptions, stung. I wanted to be an architectural artist, Amanda. I wanted to travel and study design. I had dreams too. I'm sorry, she whispered, and I could hear that she was crying. I really didn't know. It's not your fault, I said, softening slightly. But I need you to understand why I did what I did. This wasn't a sudden mental breakdown or an act of revenge. This was me finally standing up for myself after 8 years of being taken advantage of. What happens now? She asked. To Mom and Dad, I mean. Where will they live? They're not destitute, Amanda. They have savings, investments, and the payment from my purchase of their ownership stake. They can rent an apartment or buy a smaller house. They'll be fine. And what about you? What will you do? I looked at Tyler, who was waiting patiently by his truck, and at the empty store behind me. I'm going to build something new, something that's truly mine. After ending the call with Amanda, I drove to my apartment above the now empty store. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of finding my own place to live somewhere not connected to the past. But for tonight, this familiar space would do. As I prepared for bed, I placed the How to Grow Up book on my nightstand and opened it to the final chapter, Becoming the Author of Your Own Life Story. For the first time since receiving it, I felt grateful for the gift, not for the reasons my parents intended, but for the clarity it had ultimately provided. I was growing up all right, just not in the way anyone had expected. I was awakened the next morning by frantic pounding on my apartment door. Glancing at my phone, I saw it was barely 7 o'clock. I wrapped myself in a robe and cautiously approached the door. Who is it? I called. It's your parents, Karen. Open this door immediately. My father's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. I took a deep breath and opened the door. My parents stood in the hallway looking disheveled and exhausted. My father's face was unshaven, his normally immaculate appearance rumpled. My mother's eyes were red and puffy from crying. We need to talk, my father said, pushing past me into the apartment. My mother followed, clutching her purse like a shield. Please come in, I said dryly, closing the door behind them. My father paced the small living room, too agitated to sit. What you've done is criminal, he began. We've spoken to our attorney. We can press charges for theft and... I wouldn't recommend that approach, I interrupted calmly. Sandra prepared documentation of everything I removed and its connection to store profits. Additionally, we have records of the systematic underpayment of my services for 8 years. If this goes to court, it all becomes public record. You ungrateful, my father began, but my mother placed a hand on his arm. Karen, she said, her voice trembling, why would you do this to us, after everything we've done for you? The question was so disconnected from reality that I almost laughed. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Hidden. My scholarship offers underpaid me for 8 years of work, used me to fund Amanda's education and lifestyle while telling me I needed to grow up. We gave you a job, my father exploded. We gave you a place to live. We kept you involved in the family business. You exploited me. I corrected him. You used my loyalty and sense of family obligation to trap me in a situation that benefited you while stunting my growth and opportunities. That's ridiculous, my mother protested. We always wanted what was best for you. Really? Was hiding my scholarship offers what was best for me? Was paying me barely above minimum wage while using store profits to send Amanda to Europe what was best for me? My parents exchanged a guilty look that confirmed everything. We were protecting you, my father, said, his voice lower now. You weren't ready for art school. Your work wasn't good enough. We didn't want to see you fail and get your heart broken. The casual cruelty of his assessment hit me like a physical blow. Not good enough. My portfolio earned me a full scholarship. Nathan Collins, who owns a successful gallery now, still has one of my pieces displayed in his office. Professor Winters apparently still talks about me as the one that got away. Who told you that? My mother asked suspiciously. Nathan did when I reconnected with him last week. He's helping me set up my new studio space, actually. My father scoffed. A studio space? You really think you can make a living as an artist after all these years? I'm opening a design studio and specialty home goods store, I explained evenly, focusing on custom architectural elements and furniture. Tyler's construction connections are providing an initial client base, and my experience running the hardware store gives me the business background to make it successful. Tyler Davis. My mother's eyes widened. You're back with him now. We're business partners, I said. Though where that relationship goes is no longer your concern. My father sat heavily on the couch, suddenly looking much older. I don't understand how you could do this to us. We're your parents. And I was your daughter, I replied. The daughter who put her life on hold when you had a heart attack. The daughter who worked 60-hour weeks to keep your business thriving. The daughter you repaid with manipulation, lies, and a self-help book suggesting she wasn't mature enough. We never meant to hurt you, my mother said weakly. We just wanted to keep you close. After your father's health scare, the thought of you moving away was terrifying. So you decided to trap me instead, to hide opportunities that were rightfully mine, to use me as cheap labor while pretending it was for my own good. Neither of them had an answer for that. The silence was broken by a sharp knock at the door. When I opened it, Amanda stood in the hallway looking like she hadn't slept. She must have driven through the night after our phone call. I hope it's okay that I came, she said hesitantly. I needed to see everyone to understand what's happening. I stepped aside to let her in. My parents immediately moved toward her. Amanda, thank goodness, my mother said, embracing her. Maybe you can talk some sense into your sister. Amanda gently disengaged from the hug, looking uncomfortable. Actually, I came to hear Karen's side of the story. You two weren't making much sense on the phone. My father's face darkened. Don't tell me you're taking her side in this. I'm not taking sides yet, Amanda replied carefully. I just want to understand. I gestured for her to sit. What would you like to know? Everything, she said simply. From the beginning. So I told her about deferring art school when our father had his heart attack, about the increasing responsibilities at the store, about the letters I'd found. I showed her the financial records documenting how the store's profits had been distributed. I explained how our parents had entered negotiations to sell the store without consulting me despite my years of commitment. As I spoke, Amanda's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief, to growing anger not at me but at our parents. When I finished, she turned to them. Is this true? Did you really hide Karen's scholarship letters? Our father shifted uncomfortably. We were trying to protect her. The art world is brutal and her style wasn't commercial enough. That wasn't your decision to make, Amanda interrupted, shocking all of us with her vehemence. And using store profits to pay for my education while underpaying Karen. How could you think that was okay? We always intended to make it up to her, our mother insisted. Once you finished school and got established, we were going to help Karen pursue whatever she wanted. After it was too late, I pointed out. After I'd spent my 20s working in the store instead of developing my skills and building my career. Amanda stood up, suddenly pacing the small room. All these years I thought Karen chose to stay and run the store. I thought she wasn't interested in college or travel. I had no idea you were manipulating her into staying while using her work to fund my opportunities. Our father's expression hardened. Everything we did was for this family. No, Amanda said firmly. Everything you did was to control Karen while giving me preferential treatment. And you made me complicit in it without my knowledge. Amanda, please. Our mother began, but Amanda cut her off. My entire education was subsidized by my sister's unpaid labor, she said, the realization visibly distressing her. My trips, my lifestyle, all of it came at Karen's expense. She turned to me, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Karen. I swear I didn't know. I believe you, I said gently. This isn't your fault. But I benefited from it, she insisted. All those years I was looking down on you for lacking ambition. You were actually sacrificing your dreams so I could pursue mine. Our father stood up abruptly. This is absurd. We're not going to sit here and be vilified for trying to do what's best for our family. What's best for the family, I repeated incredulously. Or what's best for your control over the family, because those are very different things. "We're leaving," he announced, grabbing our mother's arm. "Amanda, are you coming?" Amanda looked between us, torn. I think I need some time with Curran. We have a lot to talk about." Our father's face reddened, but our mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Let them talk, Martin. Maybe it's for the best." To me, she added, "This isn't over, Karen. We still need to discuss where we're going to live and how we're going to manage." "Sandra will be in touch about the financial settlement," I replied evenly. "As for where you'll live, that's for you to figure out, just like you expected me to do when you decided to sell the store without consulting me." After they left, Amanda and I sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, she spoke, her voice small. "I had no idea, Karen. All these years I thought—" "I know," I said. "They created a narrative that worked for them, and we both believed it in different ways." "What happens now?" she asked. I move forward with my plans. The store is sold. I'm opening my design studio. I'm reclaiming the life I put on hold 8 years ago. And Mom and Dad, I sighed. They're not destitute, Amanda. Between their savings, investments, and the payment from my purchase of their ownership, they have resources. They're just experiencing consequences for their actions, possibly for the first time. Amanda nodded slowly. "And what about us? You and me?" The question caught me off guard. In all my planning and preparation, I hadn't given much thought to my relationship with my sister going forward. I'd been focused on breaking free from my parents' manipulation, not on building or rebuilding other family connections. "I don't know," I admitted. "That depends on you, I guess. On whether you can see me as something other than the underachieving sister who lacked ambition." Amanda winced at my phrasing. "I've been pretty awful to you over the years, haven't I?" "You believed what they wanted you to believe," I said with a shrug. "We were both manipulated, just in different ways." Still, she insisted I should have seen what was happening. I should have questioned why you stayed when you were clearly talented and capable of so much more. I reached out and squeezed her hand. "We can't change the past. We can only decide what happens next." Amanda squeezed back. "I'd like to be part of what happens next if you'll let me. I'd like to know my sister, the real Karen, not the version our parents created." For the first time since this confrontation began, I felt a genuine smile spreading across my face. I'd like that too. Later that day, after Amanda left to find a hotel room for herself, I stood at the window of my apartment looking down at the empty store below. The sold sign gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler Lease signed on the new space. "We can start moving in tomorrow. You ready for this?" I typed back, "More ready than I've ever been." As I prepared to leave the apartment for the last time, I packed the How to Grow Up book carefully in my bag. Despite everything, I was grateful for it now. Without that catalyst, that final clarifying insult, I might have continued in the same pattern for years more. Sometimes the most painful gifts turn out to be the most valuable. 6 months later, I stood in the center of Karen Anderson Design Studio, watching the late afternoon sunlight stream through the tall windows. The space had transformed from the empty former bookbinder's workshop into a vibrant studio and showroom. One side displayed my architectural artwork and custom furniture designs, while the other featured a carefully curated selection of specialty home goods and architectural elements. "Miss Anderson," a client approached, holding a sketch I'd made of a custom dining table. "This is exactly what we've been looking for. How soon could you have it ready?" "About 8 weeks," I replied, mentally reviewing my production schedule. "Each piece is handcrafted, and I have a few projects ahead of yours." "That's perfect," she said, beaming. "My husband's birthday is in 10 weeks. This will be his gift." After finalizing the details and taking a deposit, I walked her to the door. As she left, Tyler entered carrying a toolbox. "How's my favorite business partner?" he asked, setting down his tools and giving me a quick kiss. Our relationship had evolved naturally over the past 6 months, from business associates to something much more meaningful. "Just booked another custom piece," I told him. "The Andrews dining table. That's the 3rd commission this week," he noted with pride. "Not bad for a business that's only been open for 5 months. "The contractor referrals from your company have made all the difference," I acknowledged. "Speaking of which, how's the Johnson renovation coming along?" "On schedule and under budget," he replied. "And I've got 2 homeowners interested in your custom stair railings for their renovations." I smiled still, sometimes amazed by how well our businesses complemented each other. Tyler's construction company handled the structural elements of high-end renovations, while my studio provided the artistic touches and custom features that set the projects apart. It was a partnership that benefited us both professionally and had healed something in me personally. The bell above the door chimed, and Jess walked in carrying a folder. "Hey, business mogul," she greeted me. "Got those contracts you wanted reviewed." "Thanks for fitting this in," I said, clearing a space at my design table. "Coffee." "Always," she replied, setting down the folder and looking around. "This place gets more impressive every time I visit." As I prepared coffee for the three of us, I reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. The studio was thriving, exceeding even my optimistic projections. My artwork was selling steadily, with 2 pieces recently placed in the lobby of a boutique hotel downtown. I had hired 2 part-time assistants, including Jimmy from the hardware store, who had proven to have an excellent eye for design. "So Jess said, after reviewing the contracts, any word from your parents?" I shook my head. "Not directly. Sandra says they've finally stopped trying to contest the ownership transfer. They're living in a condo now, from what Amanda tells me." "Speaking of Amanda," Tyler interjected, "isn't she getting back from Europe soon?" "Next week," I confirmed. "She's flying in on Tuesday." After our confrontation 6 months ago, Amanda and I had begun the careful process of rebuilding our relationship. She had gone to Europe as planned, but with a very different perspective than before. Instead of the carefree trip our parents had funded, she'd worked remotely for part of it, supporting herself, rather than relying on family money. We'd video chatted regularly while she was away, getting to know each other as adults for perhaps the first time. I'd learned about her genuine interest in international business development, while she'd discovered my passion for architectural design and the satisfaction I found in creating with my hands. 2 months into her trip, she'd called with unexpected news. "I've been thinking about what happened," she'd said. "About how my education and opportunities came at your expense. Amanda, we've talked about this. You didn't know." "I know, but still," she'd paused. "I want to make it right somehow. So I've made a decision. When I get back, I want to invest in your business." "You don't have to do that." "I want to," she'd insisted. "I've been talking to some connections I've made over here. There's a market for American artisanal home goods in Europe. I could help you expand internationally, handle that side of the business." The idea had merit beyond the symbolic gesture. Amanda's business degree and international connections could open doors for my designs that would otherwise take years to access. Now, as I cleaned up the studio at the end of the day preparing for a small gathering we were hosting that evening, I marveled at how things had unfolded. The path from that Christmas morning to here had been painful but necessary. By 7 o'clock, the studio was transformed for our event, a combination art showing and business launch party. Nathan had helped organize it, inviting key figures from the local arts community and potential clients. Tyler's business associates mingled with interior designers and architects interested in custom elements for their projects. As I circulated through the crowd, accepting congratulations and discussing potential collaborations, I spotted a familiar face near the entrance, Professor Winters from Westlake College of Art, my former mentor for the brief time I'd fermentor. "Been enrolled." "Professor Winters." I greeted her, surprised and touched that she'd come. "Thank you for being here." "Karen Anderson," she said warmly, clasping my hand in both of hers. "I always knew you'd find your way back to art. Your talent was too extraordinary to be suppressed forever." "I'm not sure I'd be here without your early encouragement," I admitted. "Your belief in my work gave me the confidence to eventually reclaim it." She surveyed the space with approval. "What you've created here is remarkable, not just the art and designs, but the business model. Integrating artistic vision with practical applications is something few can manage successfully." Her words landed with unexpected weight. In that moment, I realized that the years I'd spent running the hardware store hadn't been entirely wasted. They had given me business skills and practical knowledge that made my current venture possible. Perhaps the path had been longer and more difficult than necessary, but every experience had contributed to who I was now. Later in the evening, as the event was winding down, Tyler clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," he announced to Karen Anderson, artist, designer, businesswoman, and the most determined person I've ever met. Glasses raised around the room as he continued. 6 months ago, Karen made the courageous decision to reclaim her life and pursue her passion after years of putting others first. What you see around you tonight, this beautiful space, These extraordinary designs, this thriving business, is the result of that courage. He turned to me, his expression softening. Karen, you've shown me what it means to grow up in the truest sense, not by following someone else's expectations, but by having the wisdom and strength to forge your own path. The reference to growing up wasn't lost on me. I smiled, thinking of the book that still sat on my office shelf, a reminder of where this journey began. After the guests had departed and Tyler and I were cleaning up, my phone rang. It was Amanda. "Hey, how did the event go?" she asked. "Better than I expected," I told her. "We sold 4 pieces and got commissions for 6 more. Nathan thinks one of the gallery owners might be interested in featuring my work in a show next spring." "That's amazing. I wish I could have been there." "You'll be here soon enough," I assured her. "And just in time for our meeting with that Swedish home goods distributor." "About that," she said, an odd note in her voice. "I have something to tell you." "What's up?" "I ran into Mom and Dad today. I'm back a few days early and stopped by their condo." My stomach tightened. "How did that go?" "Actually better than I expected. They asked about you." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That you're doing incredibly well, that your business is thriving, and that you're happier than I've ever seen you." I was silent, unsure how to respond. "They want to see your studio," Amanda continued cautiously. "Not to cause problems or make demands. I think they genuinely want to understand what you've created." My immediate instinct was to refuse. After everything they'd done, did they deserve to be part of this new chapter? But as I looked around the space that represented my reclaimed dreams, I realized something important. I was no longer afraid of them or their judgment. I was secure in who I was and what I had built. "Tell them they can come to the studio next Thursday afternoon," I said finally. "Just to see it, not to rehash the past." "Are you sure?" Amanda asked. "I am," I replied, surprising myself with how certain I felt. "It's time." The following Thursday, I was reviewing design sketches when the bell above the door chimed. Looking up, I saw my parents enter hesitantly, looking out of place and uncomfortable. My father had aged visibly in 6 months. His shoulders slightly stooped, his hair more gray than before. My mother seemed smaller, somehow less formidable. "Karen," she said softly, "thank you for letting us come." I nodded, setting aside my work and standing to greet them. "Welcome to Corinne Anderson Design Studio. This is impressive," my father admitted, looking around at the displays, the workspace, the examples of my craftsmanship. "You've accomplished a lot in a short time." "I had 8 years of business experience," I replied, not unkindly. "And I've always had the artistic ability, even if you couldn't see it." My mother touched a carved wooden panel displayed on the wall. "These are beautiful, Karen. Truly beautiful." "Thank you." An awkward silence fell. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "We owe you an apology," he said stiffly. "We were wrong about many things." It wasn't particularly eloquent or specific, but coming from him it was significant. "Yes, you were," I agreed. "But I've moved forward, and so should you." "Can we? Is there any way we can be part of your life going forward?" my mother asked tentatively, "even in a small way." I considered the question carefully. The anger that had driven me 6 months ago had largely dissipated, replaced by a calm certainty about my worth and my path. I didn't need their approval anymore, which paradoxically made it easier to consider some form of relationship. "That depends," I said honestly. "I've built a life I'm proud of, one that doesn't revolve around your expectations or approval. If you can respect that, then maybe we can begin to build something new. Not what we had before, but something healthier." They exchanged a look, then my father nodded. "We'd like to try." "So would I said, surprising myself again with how much I meant it. After they left, I returned to my sketches, but my mind was on our conversation. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or allowing the same patterns to re-emerge. It meant moving forward unburdened by resentment, free to create the future I wanted. The studio door opened again, and Tyler entered. "How did it go with your parents?" he asked, concerned. "Better than expected," I replied. "Not perfect, but a beginning." He smiled, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "That's what life is, isn't it? A series of beginnings." The next morning I woke early and went to the studio before opening hours. Sitting at my design table, sunlight streaming through the windows, I opened my sketchbook to a fresh page. Today, I would start the designs for the Johnson Project, a series of custom-built inns for a historic home renovation. As I began to draw, I felt a sense of rightness of being exactly where I was meant to be. The journey here had been painful and circuitous, but perhaps that made the arrival all the sweeter. On my office shelf sat the How to Grow Up book, no longer a painful reminder, but a symbol of transformation. Inside, I'd added my own inscription beneath my parents' original note. Growing up means having the courage to define success on your own terms and taking decisive action to achieve it. Thank you for the push I needed to finally do exactly that. Life isn't always about following a straight path. Sometimes it's about having the courage to forge your own way even when others don't understand or support your vision. It's about recognizing your worth and refusing to let others define your potential. It's about learning that the most important approval is your own. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against people who couldn't see your true potential? Or found yourself at a crossroads where you had to choose between pleasing others and following your own path? I'd love to hear your pleas. Stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more stories of transformation, and share with someone who might need this message today. Thank you for listening. And remember, the most meaningful growth often happens when we have the courage to define success on our own terms.